Welcome to the 5% Club podcast, the space where ambitious leaders go to master their careers and their lives. I'm Shayla King, a former C-suite executive turned performance and happiness coach. And this is the podcast for leaders who want it all. The promotions, the paychecks, and luxurious amounts of time for what matters most. Each week, I'll teach you how to work less, make more, and design a life you love. Let's go. Welcome back to the 5% Club podcast. I'm Shayla King, your favorite Stop Feeling Guilty coach. And in today's episode, we're talking about why you feel mom guilt and how to drop it for good. I see it all the time. Ambitious, high-achieving moms who feel like they have to apologize for wanting more. Guilt for working too much, guilt for wanting time alone, guilt for enjoying their job, guilt for missing something at school. But here's the thing, guilt's a trap. It drains your energy, it controls your decision, and it keeps you from showing up as the best version of yourself. Remember, everything that I teach is the performance and happiness formula. It's how to perform at your absolute highest while loving your life, and guilt is keeping you from loving your life. So today, we're going to talk about where it comes from, what it is, and how to get rid of it for good. So let's jump in. The first thing that I want to talk about is kind of how we're set up to fail. Moms are expected to be everything to everyone all the time. But when you add all those expectations up, it's completely impossible, ever-changing rules, right? So be a fun, cool mom, but don't let your career take up too much time. Work like you don't have kids, but parent like you don't have a job. Be sexy for your husband, but modest for your mother-in-law. Be friendly at work, but don't be too much. Be a socially engaged parent, but don't seem too into yourself. It's exhausting, and it's designed to make us feel like we're failing. There are like silly little ways too that we feel guilt. I don't know if you've ever felt this. I feel guilt over the smallest stuff that like makes no sense at all. For instance, I remember feeling guilty one day because I was tired at the hairdresser and I didn't talk to her enough. And so I was worried that she would think I like wasn't a kind person because I wasn't talkative enough during my hair appointment. This is the level at which moms feel guilt. I remember another time where, and this is just ways that I overcomplicate my life, and my husband is like supreme at saying no and keeping things simple. But my daughter was with a friend, and their mom was going to pick them up from the Galleria, which is like our local outdoor mall where all the kids hang out at. And our plans changed, and we were going to be near the Galleria. And so I said to Brian, I was like, hey, should I pick the girls up then? Because we're going to be over there. And he goes, I thought she had a ride. And I was like, well, she does. But I feel bad because I feel like the other mom drives more than me. And I don't want her to think like I don't pull my weight. I don't do my part. And he looks at me and he's like, she has a ride. I would have never let it cross my mind again. But instead, while we're out running errands and going to dinner, instead of being in the moment and enjoying myself, I'm worried about what another mom might think. At one point, I talked to one of the moms about it and I said, hey, I just want to let you know that if, she ever wants to go somewhere, like you don't have to drive. I'm fine with her not going if I'm not available to drive. And she goes, oh, yeah, honey, this is my third kid. I don't drive at all. I feel no guilt if I don't want to. So don't worry about me. How friggin' freeing is that too? When we can have a conversation with another woman and say, you don't have to worry about my feelings. I own my decisions and I only do the things that I want to do. So if I don't want to do it, I want to do it. I'll give you one more example around this. Just this morning, I had a gal who reached out to me and asked if I do a coffee chat and talk to her about her business. And she's like a local friend of mine. And of course I will. And then this morning, I just texted her to confirm the plans for like where and when I could be available. And she wrote back and she's like, if you're too busy, because I know like you're a really busy business leader, if you're too busy, then like don't let me constrain your schedule. I think as women, we can make our entire lives so much easier on ourselves if we just do what the hell we want and not have to worry about other people worrying we're doing things we don't want to do. Do you see what I mean? The strain that it puts on you when someone says yes and you have to worry if their yes really meant yes. You have to worry if that yes was actually I only feel obligated. I'm only doing it because I have to, or I feel guilty. How much easier would our lives be? If you say yes, then I expect that you want to be here and you want to show up. And if you say no, it's because you don't. And it's not my job to read in between any of that. So I've gotten much better at that over the years. With this particular friend, I wrote back and I said, look, I'm looking forward to it. And I want you to unapologetically ask for what you want. I still have the freedom to say no if it doesn't work for me. But you ask for what you want and don't worry about the other side. That's their problem. We're all growing and learning this emotional intelligence to be able to say yes to the things we want to say yes to, no to the things we don't. It is not our burden to look past the other person's answer. It is not our burden to try to figure out what they really meant and how they're really feeling about it. If they feel a certain way, they should talk to us about it. Until then, keep living your life. So, wanted to start with that example because the amount of extra guilt that we put into our lives is just insane. And at the same time, we have all of those real expectations from other people that feel like so much pressure. So it's just like at work, where when I work with a client for the first month, I always do the you're not allowed to add anything to your plate, right? Nothing new is our rule for the first month. And that's two things. It's one, things that the boss give you. So with guilt, I want you to think about everything that the world gives you and all of those expectations from all of those people and culture in your life. And then there's the things that we volunteer for and all of those extra activities at work that we shouldn't be volunteering for. Well, we do that same thing when we bring our guilt. My guilt about not talking enough to my hairdresser. I mean, come on, like completely rolling my eyes at myself. That is ridiculous. And it wasn't from her. It was from me. I did it. So we're going to talk about how to really look at guilt in a different way. And I'm going to give you a really eye-opening example of how we can differentiate when is it actually good guilt that we should care about and worry about as a good person, and when is it something else. And so I'm going to give you a way to define both. So if you don't watch, Glennon Doyle has an amazing podcast with her wife and her sister, and it's called We Can Do Hard Things. And she had Dr. Becky on there well, it was actually like a year and a half ago, but they replayed it as one of their top played ever. And I'll put it in the show notes, but it's called How to Lose 50% or Half of Your Guilt. And so Dr. Becky came on and shared a framework about really understanding when something is guilt and when it's something else. And so I'm going to give you the overview of what they talked about in the episode, but it is gold. So go listen to the whole thing so you can get all of the examples. So what Glennon talked about as her example for guilt was, the first example was her daughter had told her something that she should have kept private. And instead she told a girlfriend of hers. And when that girlfriend was over, she said something that let her daughter know that she had shared that intimate thing with her. And so in that case, she felt guilty. And the reason she felt guilty is because she acted out of alignment with her own values. Right? So she had a value that she wanted to be a safe place for her kids, and she wanted to be able to hold that space for them and have them know that it would be confidential and safe. And she acted outside of that. That is real guilt. Guilt is when we act outside of our values, right? The next example she gave was that she was leaving for dinner to go out to dinner with a friend. And her daughter is like, please don't go. No, mommy, I want you to stay here with me. I want you to be here with me. And she goes to dinner with her friend. And in the middle of dinner, she goes, I'm feeling so much mom guilt. Her friend's like, why? And she goes, my daughter was like crying, like almost doing that toddler hold on to your leg thing when I was leaving tonight, just begging me not to come. And I just feel so much mom guilt. And Dr. Becky told her that is not guilt, right? Because in that case, Glennon was acting in alignment with her own values. She values friendships. She values for herself alone, she values having friends. In addition, she values her daughter seeing her model that and being able to leave the family and go have a whole full life. She values her daughter having the safety to know that people are going to leave and come back, and the independence to be able to, you can figure out dinner on your own, and to be able to have those skills to have time alone, right? And so in that case, she was not acting out of alignment of her own values, therefore it's not guilt. What she was doing was acting out of line with someone else's expectations. That like blew my mind when they explained it that way, because it makes it so clear. Guilt is when we're acting out of alignment of our own values. And one of the things I teach my clients all the time is getting really clear on what you want and what good looks like to you. So we do values exercises and we do this entire vision blueprint. I'm currently taking my one-on-one clients through it as a group for a month-long series where we define exactly what good looks like for their life. It's part of the 5% club. Most people go through their entire life and just let life happen to them without actually defining what extraordinary looks like, right? And so for us, we do it differently. We get out of life what we want. And the only way we know what we want is to slow down and decide. And so in these 4 weeks together, we're creating their vision blueprint. We're defining exactly what good looks like for every area of their life. And we define their values as part of that. And this is really important because I'm going to ask you as my client what you want out of life, and we're going to go get it. And it's really important that it's what you want, not what guilt or shame or societal expectations has told you should want. And so there's usually some unlearning as we crumple that all apart, right? And we can really get to the root of what you want. And when we do that, we're able to clearly say, these are my values, and this is how I want to show up. And when I show up in alignment with my values, I'm proud of myself. I'm at peace with myself. It does not matter what other people's expectations are, and it doesn't matter what their reactions are. And that becomes our new litmus when we decide what they want to do. It's always going to be their decision. It's always going to be based on what they want, but I help them to like their reasons, right? And so we go through the whole decision-making process and we clean it up. And it becomes so clear the more true you are to yourself when you know what you want out of life and who you are. So if Glenna knows I'm the type of person that really values friendships in my life, I have no guilt about going out to dinner with my girlfriend. Now, my daughter might be upset, and that's her truth, and that's what she's going through, and that is fair. But I'm not going to feel ashamed or guilty of what I did, right? So the final part of the story that's really important is that when she comes home, even when she was leaving the house, but especially when she comes home, how she communicates with her daughter is really important. If she goes back and she communicates and is like, I'm so sorry, honey. I know it was really sad without me, and I'm so sorry mommy left you. I know that's hard for you, and I shouldn't have done that. What does that do to her daughter? In that situation, when she comes back and she says, I'm so sorry, it implies she did something wrong, right? And it makes her think, mommy did something against my wishes, and that was bad and wrong, and she should be here to serve me all of the time. And if I ever go out and have fun when I'm an adult with my friends, I need to feel bad about it too. It perpetuates it. We've got to break that cycle and allow women to do what the hell they want, right? Without the guilt, without the shame. Now, that doesn't mean cold-hearted, and it doesn't mean without empathy. You can come home and say, honey, I'm so sorry that you missed me. I bet that was hard for you. I really think it's important that we spend time with our friends. And so I got to see Judy tonight, and we talked about X and Y. What did you do while you were at home tonight? Right? So we can have empathy for their feelings. Their feelings are real, but that doesn't mean we did anything wrong. It doesn't mean we need to do something different next time. It doesn't mean we need to feel bad about it. Does that make sense? So I'd love for you to watch the full episode because it is so, so, so good and digs into this even more. But it is important not only how we feel about it in the moment, but how we show that as well. And as soon as we let go of that guilt, then we can enjoy the entire experience, right? Because if you go to dinner with your friend and you're still feeling shitty about leaving your kid, you're not fully enjoying it, which also means that you're not getting the rejuvenation that you would have from those activities to come back and show up better. It's kind of like when you go on a vacation, but you're so stressed about work the whole time that you come back and you don't feel rejuvenated. You don't feel like you really got away. This is the same thing. If we can lose the guilt, then we fully can enjoy that moment and that time. And then we come back feeling amazing and we can tune right back into our family. Instead, we'll come back, we'll say, I'm so sorry. They might be mad. We might have like a tiff. And then you're even further apart, which is crazy, right? So then you have, okay, 2 more hours of the kid being mad at mom and not wanting to talk. Ridiculous. And yet we do it all of the time. And I've been guilty too. So I'm not saying this from a judgmental place. I'm saying this from when you can step out of it and look at it from an outsider's perspective, it can click, be like, oh my God, I'm doing silly little things. Silly little things because that's what everyone else does. In the 5% Club, we think about these things. We're intentional and we show up differently. So we're not going to come home and feel guilty. We can come home and show empathy. Make sense? All right. So remember, guilt does not make you a better mother. It drains you. So we're going to shift that guilt to power. So over the next week, every time you feel guilt creeping in, I want you to pause and ask yourself one simple question. Is this guilt coming from values or from someone else's expectations? If it's from your values, you can use it as data. What do you want to adjust or do differently? If it's from somebody else's expectations, remind yourself, I don't need to carry guilt for not meeting unrealistic, conflicting, or outdated expectations, or just anyone else's expectations. It could be their full value, and it could be a great value, and it misaligns with what yours does in that moment. And that's fine too. You are living for yourself and yourself only. You have one life to live. So let's enjoy it. All right, let's go on to part 2, how guilt controls you and keeps you stuck. So when we feel guilty, we over-accommodate. We say yes when we want to say no. We stretch ourselves thin to prove we're doing enough and we're a good enough person, right? We act apologetic for wanting anything for ourselves. It's the guilt, control, resentment cycle. We feel bad about what we did or didn't do. We try to overcorrect by taking on more. And we get overwhelmed and resentful because we're running on empty. And then you know what happens? The people that matter most in our life, our kids, our partners, our close friends, they get the worst versions of us. Isn't that wild? So we're doing it all to try to make them like us or be proud of us or feel like we're a good person or feel like ourselves that we're a good person. And instead, when we show up, we are actually at our worst self. We're showing up and we're overwhelmed, we're drained, and we're short-tempered, all because we were doing things for them. Isn't that wild? It's like actually backwards. We do more than we want to do to show people how good we are. And then we show up as a grumpy ass version of ourselves. Instead, you can actually break free and do what you want. So let's talk about the alternative. Showing up happy, free, and unapologetic. And let me tell you, I am here for it. I have moved into my era of being unapologetic. It was a little bit at a time over the years, but after I died and was on life support and in a coma and came out of that, it was just the biggest epiphany to me that we only have one life to live. And all of this little shit doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. My dad always had a saying his whole life, which just became more and more clear after my near-death experience. And it was, don't sweat the pee-pee shit. And it's all pee-pee shit. And all of these little things and little expectations and worrying people are going to be mad at you. People are going to be mad at you regardless. Just do what you want. We'll roll through it all. You can work through those emotions. And part of what I work on with my clients is the ability to feel any emotion. If we can feel like we've let somebody down, if we can handle that emotion, then we can choose to do what we want, right? And there's so much power in that. So what if you just did what you wanted? No guilt, no over-explaining, no resentment. When you make choices that truly serve you, you actually show up better for everyone. Happier mom, happier kids, happier woman, better leader, happier you, better life. It's possible. So now that we've talked about why we feel the guilt, next week we're going to tackle how to say no without it. Because even when we recognize guilt, actually setting boundaries and protecting our time, it's a whole nother challenge for a whole nother episode. So I'm going to teach you next week a simple trick on how I hone in on my values so that I can make those decisions in the moment quickly, easily, and without guilt. So hit subscribe and so that you don't miss that episode next week. And as always, we have Evolve Work. So Evolve Work is optional homework for you to do that will allow you to take the lessons in the podcast episode and be able to apply it immediately. All of my one-on-one clients do Evolve work every week. And as you'll see, they are just simple things that you can start applying immediately that don't have to be time cumbersome, but will immediately give you results. This week, your task. Every time you feel guilty about something, I want you to reframe it into gratitude. So an example, I feel guilty for working late and missing dinner. Instead, you could say, I'm grateful that my work provides financial security for my family. Instead of saying, I feel guilty for not playing with my kids every second, I'm grateful my kids are learning independence and creativity. So why this works, it trains your brains to replace guilt with empowerment. And gratitude is a powerful tool for emotional resilience, helping you to shift from self-criticism to appreciation for your choices. So try this at least once this week and let me know, what guilt did you replace with gratitude? All right, send this episode to a mom who needs to hear it, and I would love for you to leave the pod a 5-star review if you're already loving it so far. That's our best way for us to reach more leaders who it can help. And if you want more guidance from me, you can join our newsletter at shaylaking.com, SHAYLAKING.com, for weekly performance and happiness tips. My goal is always to help you live a big, bold, and happy life. I will see you next week. Thanks for joining me in the 5% Club today. If you're ready to work less, make more, and design a life you love, go to shaylaking.com to join the 5% Club waitlist. Each Monday, I'll send you something you can implement immediately, and you'll be the first to know when applications open for the Performance and Happiness Lab, my group training program designed to accelerate you into a happy, confident executive who loves their whole life. See you there.